And so to our guest today, very excited to talk to this man. He's an author whose name is synonymous with the great thriller genre. You can call it that. He's 8 number one best-selling novels under his belt. He's back with a brand new book. It's a belter. It's called The Secret of Secrets. What a pleasure it is to welcome Dan Brown. Dan, good to see you. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Dare I say it, it's like you stepped out of the tent for a little while, and I'll be some time. Where have you been and what took you?
Well, this book took 7 years to write, and there's a reason for that. I wrote about human consciousness, which is a pretty tough topic. I happen to think it's the most fun book I've ever written. But the funny thing with authors is you live in the dark in your pajamas, and then all of a sudden they turn the light in your face and say, go be fascinating. So here I am attempting to be fascinating.
It is a brilliant subject matter for the book. There's neurology, there's neuroscience, it's the brain, there's existentialism, there's philosophy. This is you writ large. No wonder it's such a big book, because I'd say you probably could have been twice the size if you could have got more into it. It's brimming with excitement. Tell me about that, your lust for knowledge and information in this regard.
I love to learn, and, readers are smart people. They love to learn. And so I write fiction that ideally, first and foremost, entertains, but beyond that, sort of takes the reader into a world of topics and information that they never would have imagined that they were interested in. And, the tough thing about consciousness is it is a very ethereal topic. And so it took me a while to figure out how to turn something so unusual into a hard, fast-paced thriller. So that's kind of what took me so long, but I finally figured out how to do it, and here we are.
When you talk about that, you take something like the kind of high-end art or physiology or whatever you want to call it, and you have to make it accessible. With regards to the neuroscience, let's call it that for the purpose of our conversation, where did you alight on this? Was it a conversation you had? Was it something you saw, or was it a process?
It's quite a long process. I wrote a book a while back called the Lost Symbol.
Yeah.
The title. Right after Da Vinci Code, I wrote The Lost Symbol. I guess I blocked it out.
2009.
I wrote a character called Catherine Solomon, who was a noetic scientist, and that was just sort of an ancillary character. But as I studied noetics, I realized I really wanted to write a much bigger book about it. That was a long time ago. And this book, it may have taken me 7 years to write, but it took me about 20 to research. I've been reading everything I can about consciousness, and it is tricky because I'm not a neuroscientist, and I have to understand the topics to the point where I can explain them in simple enough way that really anybody can read them and understand them and get excited about them.
Let's do that then. Let's take the elevator pitch, if you will. The back of the book blurb for people who haven't read the book, which is most people listening in today for now, apart from myself. Give us a sense of the story, if you could.
Well, it's funny. If you think back to the days of, when we had a model for the solar system, we had the Earth at the center, and everybody thought that made perfect sense, but there were anomalies. There were stars that were out of place, and we eventually realized that model was wrong. And they put the sun at the center, and all of a sudden everything worked. I believe, with respect to human consciousness, that's the moment in history where we are right now. We have a current model of consciousness that is called local consciousness, and it is that all of the thoughts and hopes and dreams that we all have are the product of chemical processes in our brain, and that's how it feels to us. But there's so many anomalies that it is time that a lot of physicists and noetic scientists feel that it's time that we have a new model, and that's really what this book is about. It's about essentially assuming that everything we know about the way our brain works is entirely backwards.
Yeah.
And that when we start to accept that the brain works in much different ways, it's a pretty optimistic future, actually. And so this is an uplifting book, I hope. And certainly was a lot of fun to write.
It is. And you talk about these things that we hear about in terms of that strike me. A few things. One, what people experience when they have a bout of epilepsy. Two, what people have when it's near-death experience, the white light, and seeing something on the other side. And three, people who get hit in the head and all of a sudden can speak fluent Swahili the next day, or can be virtuoso on the violin. These are all strains that come up throughout the book that clearly fascinate you because they're so inexplicable in some ways.
Well, that's the word. They are absolutely inexplicable. There is no way that a baseball hitting a 12-year-old's head in Arizona can possibly impart the entire Mandarin Chinese language. And yet it happens. There is no way that somebody on an operating table with his or her eyes taped shut can be dead for 20 minutes, be brought back to life and tell the doctor, no, I watched the whole thing from above and this guy with a green sweater came in and he did this. And then you brought in this other machine. And yet it happens every day. And there are thousands of medically documented accounts. And so all of those sorts of things we label as paranormal. They're outside of what's normal. But the reality is there's so many of them, they are normal. And what is not working is this model that our brains are creating consciousness. In fact, Langdon, on this rather elaborate journey, discovers that something else is happening entirely.
Which brings us to Prague, a city I don't know, but a city I feel I know intimately as a result of your beautiful descriptions of this, of the architecture. Because, and I hope it doesn't sound kind of odd to say, but a lot of your books have this beautiful kind of travelogue feel to them as a subplot, and the city as a character. Certainly in Prague, I was finding myself going, I've got to get over there and have a look. But we also then have that the mysterious Gollum figure and great twists along the way, which we won't get into, other than to say that this was a city that you imbued with mysticism and a neurological curiosity, or it was there in the first instance anyway?
Oh, Prague is the most mystical city in Europe. Since the days of Emperor Rudolph II, it has been considered the magical capital and the mystical capital of the world. And all of the mystics and scryers and Kabbalists and alchemists, they all flooded to Prague to work with Emperor Rudolph on speaking to other dimensions and communicating with the dead and magic and all sorts of things that are kind of unusual.
Yes.
And Prague, you're right. You're absolutely right. I like to use location as character. I think that Prague, I knew immediately that I would have to use Prague the second I decided to write about human consciousness, not only for its mystical history, but also it is just a spectacularly dramatic character with winding passageways and little alleys and giant spires and towers and secret libraries and hidden rooms. And it's Langdon's favorite kind of landscape, one that you can show through the eyes of an historian and an academic and see in an entirely new light.
The mystery of the brain is intriguing for you, and for anyone who reads this book will be just completely swept up in all the questions that you ask. And you also describe brilliantly, because we also have an international dimension to the story and national security at stake if for the United States and so forth. We also have the situation whereby you describe it as being like the arms race in the nuclear age, but for the brain. Talk to me a little bit about that. Well,
certainly we have never created a technology that we have not weaponized, whether it was fire or the wheel or the computer. We've always found a way to kill each other with it. And it is naive to think that the breakthroughs in the study of human consciousness will be any different. Certainly AI will be no different. And yet at the same time, as important as it may be for whatever power you're talking about to really master human consciousness ahead of its enemies, there's also going to be enormous good that comes out of this technology. And, again, we may use computers to fly drones, but 99.99% of computers are used for creative purposes and communication purposes. There's so much more good in the world than evil. There's so much more love than hate. There's so much more creative power than destructive power. And I really believe that these breakthroughs that we will be making really are starting right now in human consciousness will change society for the better and very, very quickly.
Your father was a mathematics teacher, is that correct? He taught math, as you say in America?
Yes.
And your mother was a church organist, among other things, which is intriguing.
That explains why I have some mental issues. I grew up in a pretty strange household with a math teacher and a very religious mom. And was kind of funny because I didn't realize till later how unusual it was that they got along so well.
Yeah.
And I grew up very religious, believed in, Adam and Eve and Genesis and all of that, and then went to the Boston Museum of Science and learned about evolution and the Big Bang. Came back home and said, wait, well, I asked my priest, which story is true? And got the answer, nice boys don't ask that question. So I've been asking that question, now for pretty much my whole life in the form of these novels.
You say it's an odd childhood. Look, we all get to a point in our lives where we just immediately point over our shoulder and says to our folks living or dead, it's their fault. You have it in one. That's exactly it. Psychiatrists around the world are making a fortune because of parents everywhere, be they living or dead. But I just loved your description of Catherine and Robert as they were there's a kind of more intimate moment when they were listening to Ravel's Bolero, I think it was, which is a very famous song in this part of the world because it was danced to famously by Torval and Dean on ice. But your description of it is quite raunchy, dare I say it.
I don't know raunchy, but I mean, Bolero is widely known to be a piece of music that at least dynamically and rhythmically, could be seen to imitate certain physical acts that are quite pleasurable. So, it just seemed like it was a funny way to essentially show that this relationship had turned sexual, but without having to make the reader watch the whole thing.
Yeah, no, that's very good. It was beautifully geeky and very welcome as these scenes go. I'd never read something quite like it, I have to say. But do you attribute a lot of your curiosity in life to your folks?
Without a doubt. And I grew up on the campus. My dad was a teacher at Phillips Exeter Academy, which is a prep school here. And so I grew up and all my heroes were teachers. My babysitters were really bright kids from all over the world. And so I grew up sort of thinking learning was cool. I had no idea that being a geek was not cool, really until I got out into the real world. And I learned pretty fast. But you know what? Readers are smart people. They like to learn. And it's funny, I read almost exclusively nonfiction just because I do like to learn. And ideally, these books, as was stated to me by an old librarian, I thought it was the best compliment I ever got. And she said, these books are like eating your vegetables, but it tastes like ice cream. And I thought, what a great criticism. Right. I love that. That's just perfect.
Yeah.
Mission accomplished.
That is great. I mean, that is nearly a non-compliment, but actually it's a compliment. It got there. I like that. Yeah. But you described beautifully teachers and librarians, probably two of the most important professions in the world.
I believe so. Education is, certainly undervalued in most of our cultures. And, without it, we are in a whole lot of trouble.
Yeah, for sure. And do you worry about that sort of not intellectualism, but certainly maybe a bit of that with the state interference in books in libraries, what goes on exhibition in Smithsonian museums and so on. It's all the talk of the town at the moment with the current administration. Does that concern you at all, Dan?
Not really, because I write about long periods in history, and this one, however rough it may be, depending on your perspective, it's a speed bump on a much longer highway. And the pendulum has always swung back and forth, and we've had tough moments in history. All of our countries have. And, we live through them, and we come out the other side, and we find our way. And I believe that's what will happen here, too. And, at the moment, it feels catastrophic, but, it's just one moment.
Are you, do you have a favorite bookshop in the world?
Wow, that's tricky. No, I don't. On advice from counsel, I refuse to answer that question.
You like all the bookshops, but
I like them all equally.
Okay,
I like them all equally.
They're all your children.
I have to say this. I need to say that the Water Street Bookstore in Exeter, New Hampshire. I know you have an Exeter as well. I grew up in Exeter, New Hampshire. This is a bookstop, a little local bookstore that supported me when absolutely nobody did. When we had sold 12 copies of my first novel, Digital Fortress, it was their whole store window, and they drove around with me and have always been incredibly supportive of my book. So I guess if there's a favorite bookshop, it's the Water Street Bookstore in Exeter, New Hampshire. And actually, I'm thinking that may be the only place people are going to be able to get signed books. So I'll stop in there every week or so and sign a pile of books.
Oh, I love your loyalty to the project. I met you once, and I'm not doing one of those, I can't believe you don't know who I am, but I did meet you briefly in passing because we were both attending the Iceland Noir Book Festival in Reykjavik. About 2 years ago, I think.
I remember it very well.
So Ragnar Jonathan or Jonathan, as you know, and he's a pal of yours, as I understand. He's a friend of mine too, and he was delighted that we were going to chat today. But he's nervous because his new book is out too, and he thinks that you're just going to run away with all the laurels.
There's room for everybody, and Ragnar, he's a legend in his country for sure, and just a terrific guy. I'm sure he'll do just fine.
It was a lovely festival, wasn't it, in Reykjavik?
I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And I love Reykjavik. And I've been to Iceland maybe 7 or 8 times, hid out there during COVID for a bit. And it's an incredible natural phenomenon, all the different landscapes that they have there.
I was talking to the writer, Rebecca Kwong, yesterday, and she was saying in passing that she'll write a book, and when she's having a conversation like we're having now, Dan, she'll say, yeah, that's great, that book is done, but I'm nearly finished my next one. And I said, you're like a chain smoker, you're a chain author. Now, although you've had your gap of 7 years, are you thinking about the next one? Do you think it'll be sooner, the gap will be narrower? Are you just all eyes on The Secret of Secrets and you don't want to even think about anything else right now?
The first thing I'm going to ask you, do you have children?
I have 2, 26 and 20 women, 2 girls.
I would like you to just imagine being in the delivery room, standing over your wife who is holding your newborn and saying, sweetie, we should do this again. It is not the moment to be asking me about my next book.
Tell us about your next book, Dan. You're just, we're here we are in the operating theater, and I'm just curious to know. No, but I mean, I suppose I'm just wondering, does it play in your mind, or are you telling me just forget about it?
It's a weak attempt at humor. The reality is, of course, again, it will not take 8 years this next time. A lot of this was really the topic. It was just really tricky, and I took a break in the middle and wrote Children's Symphony and children's book. But really, I already know what I'll write about next. Although it's a sort of equally fascinating topic, it's something I know a little bit more about. So it should happen a little faster.
You say you read a lot of nonfiction. Do you kind of miss the fact that you can't or don't read fiction as much?
I don't. At the end of the day, I've been looking at words all day, and so I get my fiction in the form of movies and series. I can't, at the end of the day, I can't look at more words as recreation. I usually just, pour a glass of wine and watch some great series. And there's so much wonderful television on, and we're making The Secret of Secrets into a show with Netflix. And I'm involved in that, so I'm also just learning as I watch programming, what I like, what I don't like, what I think is working, just educating myself on that other medium.
What a fascinating thing, because this is such a big book. It makes sense that it's a series rather than a movie. Is that right? It's going to be like a 6-parter or something.
Yeah, I think it's going to be 8 or 10 hours, so it'd be like an 8 or 10 hour movie. And I loved making the movie. Working with Ron Howard and Tom Hanks was a great honor and great fun, and I think they did a really good job of holding the heartbeats of these books. At the same time, these are pretty long, complicated books, and to turn them into a 2-hour movie is an enormous challenge. And I really am looking forward to having those shackles removed and just say, make it as long as it needs to be. Yeah. And it's looking now like it'll be between 8 and 10 hours. What I'm really thrilled about is the producer, Carlton Cuse. He did Lost and Jack Ryan and a bunch of other big shows. He wants nothing more than to make this book. He's not looking to, use it as an inspiration for his own thing. He's trying to make it as faithful to the book as possible, which for me will be a whole lot of fun, and for my fans too.
And who's playing Robert Langdon? Can you say yet, or is it Tom Hanks, or is it somebody else?
It will be somebody else, and I would tell you if I knew, but I don't think that decision has been made.
Okay, well, it's certainly very, very exciting. And I hope that you're a fan of Irish writers and Irish writing. As an Irishman myself, I must just make reference to it.
Okay, well, absolutely. Who isn't? I mean, it's all very sad, but I like.
Have you spent winter in Ireland? You know all about sadness, I tell you. And also there's so much mysticism and Celtic storytelling in Ireland. It'd be the setting for definitely a Dan Brown book. There's no doubt about it.
It has crossed my mind many times. In fact, I was in Dublin in the wine cellar that is beneath Trinity Cathedral. Maybe you guys up there have like one of the biggest collections of wine held privately by any institution, and nobody knows about it. But I got this, and I was down there crawling through these dusty caverns, really thinking, okay, I mean, Langdon's got to find himself down here somewhere. At very least, he won't be thirsty.
That's for sure. Dan, what a pleasure it's been to talk to you today. Congratulations on The Secret of Secrets. We wish you every success and happiness, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks so much. Real pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.